When we think of the Great War, our minds usually go to trenches, battle plans, and grand strategies. But for this explainer, we're going to focus on a totally different battlefield, the human mind. We're diving into the deeply personal, psychological toll of the war, seeing it all through the eyes of German soldiers and the families they left behind. So this isn't a story about military tactics. It's a story about the human spirit pushed to its absolute breaking point. Just picture this for a second. You're a pilot, high above all the chaos. The roar of your engine fades into this strange, almost peaceful silence. You're flying among what the source calls Goliaths of the sky, these massive clouds you used to stare up at as a kid. Up here for a moment, there's this fragile peace, a chance to dream of simpler times, of home. It's beautiful, a real escape, but it's only ever for a moment. And that's the core conflict of their entire existence. One minute, you're literally touching the clouds. The next, you're plunged right back into the brutal reality of the trenches. That peaceful silence? It's replaced by the sounds of dying men. The incredible view of fields from above? It's replaced by mud that feels like a second skin in the constant stench of decay. This jarring contrast, this whiplash between fleeting beauty and constant horror, that was the world these men had to live in. That constant whiplash created what we're calling the inner war. See, for so many of these soldiers, the most relentless, the most terrifying enemy wasn't the one across no man's land. No, it was the one they carried around inside their own heads, a battle they had to fight every single day in total silence. This quote just perfectly captures that deep disconnect they felt. We get inside the head of a young officer named Willi and think about what he's asking himself. He's a veteran of death and fear. He's seen things no one should ever see. But he's a complete stranger to normal life experiences, like love. The war wasn't just risking his life, it was stealing his youth, creating this huge gap between the person he was and the hardened stranger he was being forced to become. So how do you even cope with that? Well, you build a mask. You have to. Willi, the officer we just met, he projects this image of determination, but inside, he's just bottling up all his fear. His friend Albert acts gruff, like he doesn't care about anything, but really it's just a way to distract himself from his own terror and the awful weight of being in command. And the Prussian officers? Their famous arrogance is just a shield, a tough exterior, to hide the same fear that was eating away at everyone. Each man built a persona just to get through the day. But underneath all those masks was this deep, deep disillusionment. When a group of fresh-faced young soldiers shows up looking for tales of glory, a veteran, Albert, he just gives them the cold, hard reality. He tells them, look, there are no glories here. I won't lie to you, but you don't want the truth. And that created this huge, unbridgeable gap between the myth of war and its horrifying reality, a truth that the veterans were just forced to carry all by themselves. But even in the middle of all of this chaos, people are still people, right? They still try to find some kind of connection. The thing is, the immense pressure of the war just warped and intensified everything, especially love. It turned it into this desperate, high-stakes search for meaning. So in a quiet moment, away from the front lines, Willi shares a kiss with Mina, his friend's sister, and it's described as something much more than just a physical act. It's like their souls are joining. In a world that is defined by death and by being torn apart, this one moment is just this profound, desperate need for connection, a chance to feel truly alive and to be truly seen by another person. But then, just like that beautiful moment is completely shattered by the harsh judgment of the world they live in. Mina's father sees Willi not as a potential suitor, but as an ill-bred soldier, a peasant who only wants one thing. He reduces their incredible connection to a crude transaction, calling his own daughter a lump of flesh to be violated. It's just a brutal reminder that even in the middle of a war, the old world's prejudices were still very much alive. And that, right there, is the tragedy of it all. For people like Willi and Mina, the war didn't just put them against an enemy in another trench. It forced them into this battle against their own families, against rigid class structures, and against their own hearts. It created a set of choices that were just completely impossible. So that brings us to the war back home. Because the devastation wasn't just happening on the battlefields. An entirely different kind of collapse, a slower and quieter one, was happening in the cities and towns all across Germany. And the main weapon on the home front? It wasn't a bomb or a bullet. It was hunger. For 2.5 long years, the British naval blockade was just slowly, methodically squeezing the life out of the country. This wasn't a sudden attack. It was a long, grinding pressure designed to starve an entire nation into submission. We can actually see the effects of this through Mina's eyes as she walks through her home city of Bremen. The city is just hollowed out. Its heart and soul are gone. There are no young men, only soldiers home on leave, or men who've been permanently crippled by the war. The shops are technically open, but their shelves are almost totally bare. And everywhere she looks, women are standing in these long, endless lines, queuing for whatever scraps of food they can find. It's become a city of women, children, and old men. A city of ghosts. But here's the thing. Not everyone was suffering equally. Not by a long shot. Mina's own father, who's a wealthy banker, he explains the reality of the black market. As he says, if you have the ability to pay, there is always a way to get it. This created this deep, simmering resentment. While the common people were literally starving, the rich could still get their hands on luxuries. It proved that class divided the nation just as much as the war did. All of this, the fear, the loss, the hunger on both fronts, it all leads to the final outcome, the scars that remain. As the war dragged on, the cumulative pressure just pushed individuals past their breaking points. There's this moment when a unit's commander, the man who was their rock, the one who propped up all their spirits, he finally snaps. He just breaks down. And when he cracks, it's not just the fall of one man, it signals the complete and total disintegration of the unit's morale. The glue that held them all together just dissolves, leaving every single man empty, depressed, and adrift. And that leads to this incredibly powerful summary from one of the soldiers, Albert. The war, he says, has filled the insane asylums just as much as it's filled the graveyards and the hospitals. Just think about that for a second. For the soldiers, there were 3 primary destinations: the graveyard for the dead, the hospital for the physically wounded, or the asylum for the mentally broken. There was no fourth option. And that leaves us with this one big, haunting question. An armistice can stop the bullets from flying, but it can't erase the scars. For the generation that endured it, both on the front lines and back home, the war kept on being fought inside their minds, long, long after any official peace was signed. The real wreckage wasn't just in the fields of France, it was in the souls of the survivors.